Listen closely. There is a truth most people avoid because it is uncomfortable to face. You will live with yourself longer than you will live with anyone else. Through every season, every failure, every moment of silence, and every moment of noise, you remain with you. That is why the most important relationship you will ever have is not with the world outside, but with the one within. If you cannot stand beside yourself in difficulty, then who will you truly stand with when life becomes heavy? You are your longest commitment. Not your job, not your relationships, not your achievements. All of these will shift, change, appear, and disappear. But you remain. So the question becomes very simple. How are you training your mind? How are you shaping your body? How are you cultivating your awareness in each breath you take? Many people search for strength outside. They look for validation, direction, approval. But true strength is not borrowed. It is built in silence, repetition, and discipline of the inner world. When you begin to truly observe your breath, you are not simply observing air moving in and out of your body. You are observing life itself expressing itself through you in the most direct and honest way. There is nothing more immediate than this. Before every thought, before every emotion, before every reaction, there is breath. It is already happening, already guiding you, already revealing your state, whether you notice it or not. Most people move through life without ever truly meeting their breath. They are lost in thinking, carried by memory, pulled by imagination, always somewhere else. Yet the breath is always here, waiting patiently, never forcing, never leaving. It is the most faithful companion you have, but also the most ignored. And the moment you begin to recognize it, something very subtle begins to shift in your inner world. And to be aware of the breath is to return from illusion to reality. Because the breath does not exist in yesterday and it does not exist in tomorrow. It only exists now. When you breathe consciously, you are not trying to change life. You are simply meeting it as it is. Inhale and you receive. Exhale and you release. There is no resistance in nature of breath when it is allowed to flow freely. It is only the mind that creates resistance, division, and tension. Notice how your breath changes when you are anxious. It becomes shallow, fast, disconnected. Notice how it becomes heavy when you are tired, or irregular when you are confused. The breath is always honest. It never lies. It reflects your internal state with complete precision. And this is why awareness of breath is the beginning of awareness of life itself. Because if you cannot see your breath, you cannot truly see your state. When you sit quietly and bring attention to it, you are not trying to control it. You are learning to listen. There is a difference between control and awareness. Control creates tension. Awareness creates understanding. You begin to feel the rhythm that was always there beneath the surface of your thoughts. For instance, you begin to realize that you are not just thinking, you are also being. And being is always deeper than thinking. With time, something very important happens. The breath becomes an anchor. In moments of disturbance, you no longer immediately react. There is a space, a pause, a return. And in that return, clarity begins to arise. You are no longer completely identified with every passing emotion. You see them come, you see them go, but you remain rooted in something deeper. That root is awareness. In training the breath, you are training presence. In training presence, you are training life itself. Because how you breathe is how you live. A scattered breath creates a scattered life. A calm breath creates a stable life. A conscious breath creates a conscious existence. Nothing external needs to change for this to begin. It starts exactly where you are. Many search for peace in distant places, in achievements, in people, in outcomes. But peace does not arrive from outside. It is uncovered from within. And the doorway to that inner space is always the same. It is the breath. Simple, ordinary, always available. Yet it holds the entire mystery of existence if you are willing to stay with it long enough. There will be moments when the mind resists this simplicity. It will say this is too small, too basic, too slow. But the deeper truth is that what is simple is often what is most profound. It takes strength to remain with something so subtle without escaping into distraction. It takes discipline to return again and again when the mind wants to run, and yet every return strengthens you. Every moment of awareness builds stability inside you. Slowly, you stop being only a reaction to the outside world. You begin to become someone who observes, who understands, who responds rather than reacts. This is not a dramatic transformation. It is quiet, almost invisible. So when you breathe, do not rush it. Do not use it as a technique alone. Use it as a reminder that you are here, fully here, not somewhere else, not lost in thought. Here in this moment, alive, aware, existing, and in this simple recognition, everything begins to settle within you. Discipline is often misunderstood. Many people think it is force, pressure, punishment, or a rigid structure imposed upon life. But true discipline is something far more intimate. It is not about becoming someone else through struggle. It is about choosing yourself again and again, especially in moments when it is easier not to. Every day, life presents you with choices that seem small, almost insignificant. To wake up or to delay, to speak truth or to avoid discomfort, to stay present or to escape into distraction. And in each of these small moments, you are not just making decisions about actions. You are shaping your relationship with yourself. When you choose discipline, you are not fighting against life. You are aligning with it. You are saying to yourself, I am here, I am aware, and I will not abandon myself in this moment. This is not aggression, it is care. It is the quiet strength of someone who understands that the future is built through repetition of the present. Many people wait for motivation, they wait for a feeling, a spark, a moment of inspiration that will carry them forward. But motivation is unstable, it comes and goes like weather. Discipline is different. Discipline remains even when feelings disappear. It is what holds you steady when nothing inside you feels certain. To be disciplined is to return. Again and again, even when you fall into distraction, even when you lose focus, even when you forget your direction. You return, not with anger, not with judgment, but with awareness. This return is what builds inner strength. Not perfection, but consistency in coming back. There is a deep misunderstanding that discipline is against freedom. But in truth, discipline is what creates real freedom. Without discipline, the mind is scattered. It is pulled in every direction by impulse, habit, and external influence. But with discipline, there is clarity, there is space, there is choice, and where there is choice, there is freedom. Okay. When you practice discipline in small things, it begins to shape larger dimensions of your life. The way you eat, the way you move, the way you speak, the way you think, everything begins to align. Not through force, but through awareness repeated over time. You are no longer controlled by every passing desire. You begin to observe before you act, and in that observation, something important awakens. You realize that you are not your impulses, you are not your distractions. You are the one who can choose whether to follow them or not. This realization is powerful because it returns authority back to you, not external authority, but internal sovereignty. Discipline is also a form of self-respect. Every time you choose what supports your growth over what weakens your awareness, you are telling yourself that you matter, that your time matters, that your energy matters. It is a silent form of self-love that does not need words. It is expressed through action. There will be resistance. The mind will negotiate. It will say later, tomorrow, just this once. It will create stories that make avoidance feel reasonable. This is normal. The practice is not to eliminate resistance, but to see it clearly and still choose consciously. That is where strength is formed. Over time, discipline becomes less about effort and more about identity. You are no longer trying to be disciplined. You simply act from a place that is aligned. It becomes natural to return to what supports you. It becomes natural to stay consistent because your inner structure has changed. And when discipline becomes identity, life becomes less chaotic. Not because challenges disappear, but because you are no longer fragmented inside yourself. There is a center, there is stability. There is presence even in movement. So discipline is not about restriction. It is about relationship. The relationship you have with your own actions, your own choices, your own awareness. It is the practice of not leaving yourself behind when things get uncomfortable. Okay. Every time you choose yourself, even in a small way, you strengthen that relationship. And in that strength, life begins to move with more clarity, more direction, and more quiet power. Comfort is one of the most subtle forces that shapes a human life. It does not arrive loudly. It does not demand attention. It slowly wraps itself around your habits, your thoughts, your routines, until what once felt like growth begins to feel unnecessary. At first, comfort feels like safety. It feels like rest. It feels like you have finally arrived somewhere stable. 40 Alpha. But if you observe carefully, comfort does not ask you to expand. It asks you to stay the same. And life, in its deeper intelligence, is never asking you to remain the same. When you stay too long inside comfort, the spirit begins to soften in a way that is not strength, but stagnation. You stop testing your limits, you stop meeting resistance, and without resistance, there is no refinement. Just as water that never moves becomes still and stagnant, a human being who avoids challenge begins to lose clarity, vitality, and direction. Challenge is not the enemy, it is the teacher. Every moment of difficulty is life inviting you to wake up, not to suffer blindly, but to become more aware, more present, more capable of meeting what is in front of you without collapsing inwardly. When you avoid challenge, you are not avoiding pain alone. You are avoiding growth. Because growth always carries a form of discomfort with it. It stretches what you currently believe yourself to be. Think of the body. Strength does not come from rest alone. It comes from resistance, from weight, from strain that is applied and released in cycles. Without that resistance, muscles do not develop. In the same way, the inner world of a human being does not develop without psychological and emotional resistance. The mind needs friction to become clear. The spirit needs challenge to become strong. But comfort tells a different story. It whispers that you should stay where things are easy, where there is no pressure, where nothing disturbs your current state. And if you listen to this voice for too long, your world becomes smaller without you even noticing. Your boundaries shrink, your tolerance decreases, your courage weakens. Not because you are incapable, but because you have not been tested. Challenge, on the other hand, pulls you outward. It asks you to face what you usually avoid. It asks you to stay when you want to escape. It asks you to breathe when your instinct is to withdraw. And in that moment of staying, something very important happens. You begin to discover that you are more than your initial reaction. You are more than your fear. You are more than your discomfort. This discovery is not intellectual. It is experiential. It happens in real time when you remain present in the middle of difficulty and realize that you did not break, that you did not collapse, that you actually became more aware through it. This is how the spirit is refined. Not by avoiding fire, but by passing through it consciously. Many people misunderstand challenge as something to defeat. But challenge is not here to be defeated. It is here to be understood. It is here to reveal where you are still attached, where you still resist, where you still hesitate. Every challenge exposes something that was hidden in comfort, and in that exposure there is an opportunity to transform. When you repeatedly choose comfort over challenge, life becomes predictable but shallow. When you choose challenge over comfort, life becomes uncertain but deep. One gives you familiarity, the other gives you expansion. There will always be a part of the mind that resists challenge. It will say it is too difficult, too uncomfortable, too much effort. But this voice is not truth. It is conditioning. It is the habit of avoiding intensity. And if you believe it without awareness, you will slowly limit your own potential without realizing it. Okay, the practice is not to reject comfort completely, but to not be governed by it. Comfort has its place in rest and recovery, but it should never become the foundation of your life. Because a life built only on comfort cannot hold strength when life inevitably becomes uncertain. Challenge brings honesty into your existence. It shows you where you are strong and where you are still fragile. It removes illusion. And although this process can feel intense, it is deeply liberating. And because once illusion is removed, you begin to see clearly, and in clarity, there is power. So when challenge appears, do not immediately turn away. Observe it. Stay with it. Breathe with it. Allow it to reveal what it has come to show you. Because in that very moment, you are not being tested to be broken. You are being refined to become stronger, clearer, and more awake within yourself. And in this continuous meeting with challenge, the spirit becomes unshakable. Most people believe their thoughts are commands. Whatever appears in the mind is immediately taken as truth, as reality, as something that must be obeyed or reacted to. But if you observe closely, you will see something very important. Thoughts are not instructions. They are movements. They are patterns. They are passing formations in awareness, not the authority over awareness itself. The mind is constantly producing content. Some thoughts are logical, some are emotional, some are random, some are repetitive, and many are influenced by past experiences that are no longer even relevant to the present moment. Yet without awareness, a person becomes completely identified with them. A single thought of doubt can become a belief. A single thought of fear can become a limitation. A single thought of failure can become identity. But none of these thoughts are who you are. Okay? They are clouds moving across the sky of your consciousness. They appear, they shift, and they disappear. The sky remains untouched. But when you forget you are the sky, you start believing you are the cloud. And this is where suffering begins, because now every thought has power over you, not because it is powerful, but because you are unaware of your space beyond it. To understand that thoughts are not commands is to reclaim your inner freedom. It means you are no longer automatically controlled by every mental movement. There is a space between stimulus and response. In that space, awareness lives, and in that space, choice becomes possible. When a thought arises, for example, fear, the usual pattern is immediate identification. The body tightens, the mind reacts, and the emotion expands. But if awareness is present, something different happens. You see the thought, you recognize, you do not merge with it. And in that simple recognition, the thought begins to lose its authority over your system. This does not mean thoughts disappear. The mind will continue to generate them. That is its nature. But your relationship with them changes completely. Instead of being inside the thought, you begin to observe the thought. An observation creates distance, not emotional distance in a cold sense, but clarity. You begin to see that what you thought was reality is actually just mental activity. Most suffering is not created by life itself. It is created by unquestioned thoughts about life. A situation arises, and the mind immediately interprets it. That interpretation is often shaped by fear, memory, or expectation. And then that interpretation is taken as absolute truth. But when awareness deepens, you begin to see that interpretation is just one possibility, not reality itself. This is why awareness of thought is so important. Because without it, you live inside a constructed world that feels real, but is actually layered with assumptions. You are not responding to life directly. You are responding to your thoughts about life. And this subtle difference changes everything when you begin to observe thoughts without attachment. Something very natural happens. The intensity reduces, the urgency dissolves. You start to notice how repetitive the mind actually is. The same patterns appear again and again, just in different forms. And once you see this clearly, you stop giving them unnecessary authority. This is not suppression. This is understanding. Suppression is force. Awareness is clarity. When you suppress thoughts, they remain active underneath. When you observe them, they lose density, they lose grip, they become lighter in your system. There is also a deeper realization that comes with this practice. You begin to see that you are not the thinker, you are the one who is aware of thinking. This distinction is subtle but life-changing, because the thinker is constantly changing, but awareness remains steady. The thinker is reactive, but awareness is stable. The thinker is shaped by conditions, but awareness is not bound by them. When you live identified only with thought, life feels fragmented. There is constant inner noise, constant evaluation, constant judgment. But when awareness becomes stronger, thoughts are still there, yet they no longer dominate the entire field of experience. There is space around them, and in that space, peace begins to emerge naturally. You do not need to fight your thoughts. You do not need to control them. You only need to see them clearly, and in that seeing, something very powerful happens. The illusion of control that thoughts had over you begins to dissolve. Then you realize a simple truth. You are not inside your thoughts. Your thoughts are inside you. And in this recognition, a deeper silence becomes available. Even in the middle of thinking, silence is not empty. It is not absence. It is not a void that needs to be filled. Silence is the background in which everything appears and disappears. But most people never truly enter it because they are constantly surrounded by noise, both external and internal. Even when the world becomes quiet, the mind continues its movement, replaying memories, imagining futures, creating stories that never stop unfolding. Stillness is not something you create by force. It is something you uncover when you stop moving away from the present moment, because stillness is already here. It is underneath the noise. It is not separate from life. It is the foundation of life itself. But to recognize it, you must stop identifying only with movement. The human mind is addicted to motion. Thoughts, emotions, reactions, distractions, plans, worries, comparisons. There is always something pulling attention outward or forward. And in that constant movement, you begin to lose connection with the quiet center within you. Not because it is gone, but because you are no longer looking there. Stillness reveals what noise hides. This is its true function. Noise creates illusion. It fills perception with interpretations, judgments, and assumptions. It makes everything appear more complicated than it actually is. But when noise begins to settle, clarity naturally emerges. You begin to see things as they are, not as the mind labels them. When you sit in stillness, at first it may feel uncomfortable. The mind resists it. It tries to fill the space with thoughts. It says this is boring, this is wasteful, this is unproductive. But what it is really reacting to is not stillness itself, but the absence of distraction. Because in distraction, the mind avoids itself. In stillness, the mind is seen. And what is seen cannot control you in the same way anymore. As you remain in stillness, something subtle begins to happen. The layers of mental noise slowly begin to lose their intensity. Thoughts still arise, but they no longer pull you completely. Emotions still appear, but they do not dominate the entire field of awareness. There is a space around everything, a quiet presence that was always there but now becomes noticeable. This presence is not something external. It is not something you achieve. It is what remains when identification with noise loosens. And in that presence, there is a deep sense of grounding. You are no longer fully scattered across time. You are not constantly moving into past or future. You are here, fully here. Stillness also allows you to see the unnecessary complexity created by the mind. Problems that felt overwhelming begin to appear simpler. Emotions that felt heavy begin to loosen their grip. Decisions that felt confusing begin to clarify on their own. Not because the situation changes, but because your perception of it becomes clearer. In noise, everything feels urgent. In stillness, urgency dissolves. You begin to see that most of what feels urgent is actually created by mental projection. When you are still, you are not reacting to imagined timelines. You are responding to what is actually present. This is why stillness is not inactivity. It is a deeper form of intelligence, because action that arises from stillness is precise. It is not scattered. It is not driven by fear or impulse. It is aligned with awareness, and such action carries a different. If the mind is filled with fear, the body prepares for defense. If the mind is filled with calmness, the body enters ease. If the mind is filled with confusion, the body loses coordination and clarity. This is how deeply connected they are. But most people live without awareness of this connection. They try to fix the body without addressing the mind, or they try to calm the mind without noticing the condition of the body. This creates imbalance, because you cannot separate what is fundamentally unified. To understand one, you must include the other. When awareness deepens, you begin to see the body not as an object, but as a mirror. It reflects your inner world with precision. It shows you where you are holding tension. It shows you where you are resisting. It shows you where you are disconnected. Instead of ignoring these signals, you begin to listen to them. For example, tightness in the shoulders is not just physical. It often reflects emotional burden or mental pressure. A heavy chest is not just physical discomfort. It can reflect emotional suppression. Restlessness in the legs is not just movement. It can reflect impatience or mental instability. The body speaks in sensations, not words. When you begin to listen, something important changes. You stop treating the body as separate from your inner life. You begin to see it as part of your awareness. And with this recognition, care becomes more natural. Not forced care, but intelligent attention. The body also responds strongly to presence. When you are fully present, even for a few moments, you will notice a shift. The breath becomes smoother. The muscles soften. The internal pressure reduces. This is because presence dissolves fragmentation. And fragmentation is what creates tension in the first place. When the mind is divided between past and future, the body carries that division. But when attention returns to the present moment, the body follows that return. It begins to settle. It begins to align. It begins to function without unnecessary resistance. This is why practices that cultivate awareness always influence the body, not because they directly target physical strength, but because they change the state of consciousness that the body is responding to. The body does not act independently. It is always in dialogue with awareness. Over time, you begin to realize that taking care of the mind is also taking care of the body, and taking care of the body is also supporting the clarity of the mind. They move together. They evolve together. They respond to each other continuously. When you live with this understanding, your approach to yourself becomes more respectful. You stop forcing the body beyond awareness. You stop pushing the mind without listening to the signals of the body. Instead, you begin to move with sensitivity, with balance, with attention. Even simple actions like walking, breathing, or sitting become more conscious. You are no longer separate from the experience of the body. You are present within it. And in that presence, coordination becomes natural rather than forced. The more you observe this connection, the more you realize that harmony does not come from control, but from awareness. When the mind is clear, the body reflects clarity. When the mind is disturbed, the body reflects disturbance. This is not something to judge. It is something to understand. And in this understanding, both mind and body begin to move together in a more unified way, creating a deeper sense of stability within you. Consistency is often misunderstood as repetition alone. Many people think it is about doing the same thing again and again without break. But true consistency is not mechanical repetition. It is alignment over time. It is the quiet decision to return to what is meaningful, even when the mind resists, even when motivation fades, even when distraction feels easier. At the beginning, most people rely on intensity. They move with strong emotion, strong motivation, strong inspiration. They feel deeply committed for a short period of time, but intensity cannot sustain a life. It burns fast and disappears just as quickly. What remains after intensity fades is consistency. And consistency is what builds real foundation. Consistency is not loud. It does not announce itself. It does not seek validation. It is quiet, almost invisible in the moment. But over time, it becomes powerful beyond measure because what you repeat daily does not stay external. It becomes internal. It shapes your thinking. It shapes your behavior. It shapes your identity. This is why consistency is not just an action. It is a process of becoming. Every small action repeated with awareness becomes part of your inner structure. Every time you choose discipline over distraction, you strengthen your foundation. Every time you return to awareness after forgetting, you deepen your stability. Even if progress feels slow, consistency ensures that nothing is wasted. Everything accumulates silently within you. Most people underestimate small actions. They think only big changes matter. But life is not changed in sudden moments alone. It is shaped in repeated moments that seem ordinary. One breath taken with awareness, one moment of patience, one choice made consciously instead of impulsively. These small acts, when repeated, create transformation, but the mind often resists consistency because it does not give immediate reward. The mind prefers quick results. It wants visible progress, fast outcomes, instant validation. When it does not see immediate change, it begins to question the process. It says, "This is not working." It says this is too slow. It says this is meaningless. But consistency requires moving beyond this voice. Because growth is not always visible in the beginning. Just like a seed does not immediately become a tree, inner transformation also takes time beneath the surface. What you cannot see is often where the real change is happening. Roots are forming, strength is building, stability is developing quietly. Consistency is trust in this invisible process. When you remain consistent, you begin to notice a shift in your relationship with yourself. You stop depending on emotional highs to act. You stop waiting for perfect conditions. You simply begin. Even when the mind is not fully aligned, you still move in the direction of what matters. This builds reliability within yourself, and reliability with yourself is one of the deepest forms of inner strength. Without consistency, awareness remains fragmented. You understand something one day, but forget it the next. You feel clear in one moment,